Well, I guess it's been a little while since we caused some controversy on the platform, but I don't really go out of my way to do things like that. It's just if a situation bothers me, I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to hold back because this is just my opinion on it. If people agree with me, that's cool. If they don't agree with me, that's cool as well. But I would at least like to get the information out there. And today we're talking about IGN. And look, I don't inherently hate IGN. I like some of the people there. I like Brian Altano. I think he's a good guy. I've talked to him a bunch before, and I like conversing with him. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's lots of people at IGN that I don't like, that have blocked me over very petty things before. That's fine. You don't want to have a conversation about a topic that you bring to the forefront. Cool with me. I don't really care. Of course, we had the whole IGN France guy. We had to roast him over a Spitfire, and that made a lot of people mad. So I'm sure today's video will do something very similar. But I'm noticing a very growing trend with IGN that is extremely problematic. It is extremely problematic, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. If anything, it's going to get worse, and potentially a lot worse. So what am I talking about with this? Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. But let's just kind of hop straight into this, because this was one of the things I want to talk about today. This was an IGN article that just went up a few hours ago. E3 finally feels back. And I guess we're talking about the situation that we just had with Summer Games Fest and IGN Live and Microsoft's presentation. This is kind of a bit of a announcement, a revelation that, hey, E3 is back. It finally feels like it. We had Summer Games Fest, the Xbox Game Showcase, Ubisoft Forward, and IGN Live. It was preceded by a PlayStation Showcase, and at some point there'll be a Nintendo Direct. And this is just kind of a very self-serving article because IGN debuted their IGN Live show this year, which was like supposed to be like an E3 style event. The only thing I'm going to say about it, because I didn't watch the show, I did tune in briefly to see the Thing Remastered, which was essentially just a teaser trailer, because I was very confused as to why that was going to be at IGN Live. But it was at IGN Live, and I noticed that there are over 18 million subscribers to IGN Live's channel. And at the time that I tuned in, which was during the presentation, there were 3,000 live viewers. Pretty much everyone was waiting for Summer Games Fest to happen, and nobody was really covering IGN Live or live streaming reactions to it because I really don't think anyone had faith in that. But this is evidently something that really brought back that E3 feeling and stuff. Like, no. What are you talking about? There was no Nintendo. There was no EA. There was no Capcom. PlayStation was there in spirit. They went in May. This had nothing to do with this weekend. E3 was about a concentrated block of events where you had all these companies doing their presentations, whether they were live presentations or tape presentations, direct style presentations, but it was a celebration of video games. You knew when everything was going to happen. Everything was nice, clear, and concise. You knew when you were going to be able to cover things. This was a smorgasbord of just random things happening at random times that didn't really interact with other things. And thankfully, when you look at the comments here, people are kind of fighting back on this. And I wouldn't expect this on an IGN platform, but you could see here, totally disagree. E3 was 1 week. Everyone showed up. There was discussion of who won E3. Obviously, that's a thing. This guy here, I like Metal Gear Sony. No offense, but just because the staff at IGN put on a show in June doesn't mean E3 is back. No Nintendo, no Sony, no EA, no major announcements outside of the Xbox showcase, which wasn't even in front of a live audience. E3 is still dead. And there's lots of comments that are kind of parroting this. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, why is this a big deal? And it kind of goes into the next point I want to make about IGN, besides this sort of self-serving mantra that they have now that they put on their little IGN Live event and got a couple thousand viewers, which, hey, you know what? That's a lot of viewers for me. But if I have 18 million subscribers, I'm expecting a bigger turnout at my live event, because I feel like no one really knew like when this was happening and what to kind of expect to be there. But IGN has done something very recently that was talked about a couple of weeks ago. I probably should have talked about it, but I kind of wanted to wait and see kind of the fallout from the situation. IGN acquired a lot of different video game websites and publications on the internet, and they kind of got a bit of a monopolistic feeling going on with the amount of consolidation that they did, which is very ironic because whenever, a video game company lays people off, or there's, whatever have you, a studio shuts down, you see all these journalists get their empathy blanket on, and they go out on social media and they let everyone know how empathetic they are towards these studio closures. And obviously studio closures, video game industry layoffs, they're not a good thing. I'm not trying to say that they are, but I find it ironic that the company that you work for, the company that you work with, the company that you do business with, does something very similar, buys up a bunch of other websites. Obviously, people are going to get laid off. Obviously, people are going to lose their jobs. Obviously, there's going to be consolidation. Even if it doesn't happen on day one, at some point in time, they're going to consolidate this. That's how these large acquisitions kind of work. You're going to see the same thing happen with tons of journalists. But because you work for IGN or work with IGN, you'll be radio silent. I just want to ask one question before we move into this next point. What do you think is easier to get a job in right now in 2024? Do you think it's easier if you're a game developer to get a job, or a games journalist? Which trajectory is going up? Games journalism or game development? I think it's probably a bit easier to get into game development because video games are always being made. You don't really see websites popping up nowadays because it's kind of a bit of a dying medium, but I digress. I saw this thing on the internet today. Sony ponies, after getting their L yesterday from me, they were celebrating something, and it has to do with this article here from gamesindustry.biz. Now, gamesindustry.biz used to be, I guess it could still kind of be, but this website was a very no-nonsense website. It was literally about the business side of things. Yes, there were sometimes opinion pieces that were kind of off the rails at points in times, but for the most part, it was kind of just news and business and actual factual things with no real personal implications in it. And I saw this pop up, and everyone on social media is going wild with this. Astrobots beats Doom as the #1 wishlisted game of the Summer Games showcases. IGN playlist reveals the purchase intent of gamers from the last 2 weeks. Who cares? What is IGN playlist data? Who cares about IGN playlist data? And you figure there has to be a reason why we're talking about this, which is a backlog and play activity tracker that is available on the web and via a mobile app. Who uses this? 43,000 gamers? 43,000 people, and we're writing an article about this. But why are we writing an article about this? Oh, because gamesindustry.biz, which is now part of the IGN group of websites, will continue to publish IGN playlist insight and data moving forward. None of you watching this video have ever heard of IGN playlist, especially to a point where it is a valid metric that is worth a written article on a website that used to be known just for factual information. This isn't console war stuff at all, right? And when you look at this list, because you could say, well, RGT, that's fine, but the numerical data doesn't lie. Those 43,000 people, they voted. They voted on what their games were. Okay, let's keep that in mind here. So IGN, they're from May 30th to June 12th. Astrobot was indeed their first game. Obviously, you see here, Perfect Dark, Gears of War, E-Day, Doom, all below Astrobot here. But here's where this list falls apart. Because South of Midnight was number 7, and Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was number 9. I'm just going to ask a simple question here. No disrespect to South of Midnight. I think it's an interesting game. I don't like the cutscene style of it, but I think the gameplay looks pretty cool. Which game is going to sell more? South of Midnight or Call of Duty Black Ops 6? And that kind of brings us to my next point here. I know what you're thinking. Well, who cares about this? it's a going back to that whole power situation, because IGN now controls many different branches of video game information. They now run many different websites as a massive conglomerate. And obviously, all of these websites are not going to be working independently. They're not going to be, oh, we'll be hands off with you. Like, sure, they might say that at first, but at some point in time, their influence is going to be shown. And this being a prevalent topic on a website that used to just be known for facts and basic information and no sort of narrative, for this to be a prevalent topic when you could clearly see flaws and holes in the logic of it, that's a scary thing. There's the competition is a good thing. I don't understand why it seems like a lot of younger people don't understand why competition is a good thing. You don't want monopolies. You don't want monopolies in any sector of life. You want choices. You want options. You want different things that you can do, different places that you can go. If there's only one restaurant, one cable company, one internet provider, one news channel, one sports channel, don't you think things are going to get a little bit murky? Don't you think narratives are going to be pushed, and any sort of pushback will be conceived as just crazy talk? Because the one place said it. The one place said it. Now, all these other places that are subsidiaries of the main place are saying it. But I think this is the most disingenuous thing with IGN going on right now. I don't like the conglomeration. I don't like this self-serving, self-blowjob because you put on Summer Games Fest, an event that no one really cared about. Obviously, it was a big industry thing. You saw all the usual suspects at all these events, but there's no conspiracy here. They all just happen to be friends, and they all just happen to work together. You got other outlets doing things piggybacking off of this. High senior editors at websites talking about fighting people. That's real classy. But this, I think, has to be the most disgusting thing about this, because IGN held an interview with Phil Spencer after the Microsoft showcase. And I was very annoyed with that interview because Phil kind of walked back every good piece of goodwill that Xbox had just done. But there's a much more sinister story going on here. And this is being reported by Multiplayer First. Report: IGN instructed and even offered prizes for crowd to cheer during Phil Spencer and other live interviews. So you go down here, and this individual, Dream Bowem, made a tweet talking about, I can't believe it. Phil Spencer entirely ducked the question around Tango's closure. This is an IGN interview. Ryan McCaffrey, I believe, is his name. And tried to pretend he went into hiding out of respect for the studios he closed. And the audience cheered. They clapped at this. So Phil was asked, and this was kind of a softball interview, but Phil was asked about Xbox closing down studios in Tango. And the reaction by the crowd was to cheer what they said. But why is that? Well, Mr. Bruno was there. And Bruno says, "We were told and pumped to cheer. The loudest cheerleader got prizes. They did whatever they can to keep the energy in the room." And this is a problem not only with IGN, but the video game industry as a whole. This toxic positivity thing. And I know it's a very delicate topic, toxic positivity versus toxic hatred. There's hate mongerers, there's people that are toxic positive people. I always say that the toxic positive people are more dangerous than the hate mongers. The hate mongers tend to just stay in their own little world. Okay, they hate everything. They make the same video every other day talking about the stuff that they hate, but they stay kind of in their own lane. Toxic positive people will preach to the stars their positivity and then shun people who think differently than them, or be combative with these people that are hate mongerers or always hating on everything. And I feel like toxic positivity is such a dangerous thing because think about it from this perspective. If a video game company gets a very negative backlash, whether it's genuine, whether it's hate mongering, it makes them think about something. If a video game company gets a very positive reaction to something where it's a toxically positive situation, then they're encouraged to continue to do things, whether or not that's going to be smart for their bottom line. I think back to the Ubisoft presentation. They showed a JPEG of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time coming out in 2026, and the crowd cheered. Why would you cheer for that? Why would you cheer for a game that's been delayed numerous times, that now has a release window for 2 years out, that should have been out way before? And that's why video game companies get away with stuff like this. And the fact that IGN has so much power, it should really scare people, man. It's not just them anymore. It's them and a bunch of different tentacles that they own. I don't know. Just my thoughts, just my opinions. I don't mean any ill will towards it. I'm sure some journalists will get mad at me. It's fine. I don't really care. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. I don't know how interesting it was. Like I said, this is just my opinion. If you disagree, let me know in the comments section down below. I won't hate you for disagreeing. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.